There we go. Afternoon, everyone. Let me just give people, I can see people filtering in. Good afternoon, good afternoon. Are people coming through? It always takes, it's always that sort of 30 seconds where you can see the numbers filling up. Let's give it another 10 seconds, and then in the interest of time, I think we will kick off. Perfect. Well, welcome everybody. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I was just explaining before this. We've got people taking down trees in our garden, and all morning they've been using chainsaws and leaf blowers and log chippers. So I'm in the kitchen with AirPods on. Hopefully the sound is coming through loud and clear. Thank you all for giving up to the end of your lunch hours to join us for our webinar today. I'm David McGlashan, so I am Head of Sales and Marketing at SSE, and I'm joined by three of our fantastic fellows, so Jack, Carlos, and Lyndall, all of whom will introduce and give a bit more background about themselves over the next couple of minutes. Just in terms of the format, so I'll invite each of our panelists just to speak for a few minutes, introducing themselves and their organisation, and we'll move on after that to a panel discussion, and then there's time at the end for audience Q&A. However, if you look at the bottom of your screen, there is a function there to hit Q&A. So use the Q&A rather than the chat, and that will submit questions that we can answer. Either we'll park them until the end, or if there's a appropriate time, we'll send them straight to the panel. But other than that, I think we are good to go. So first I'll hand to Carlos Salvador of London Football Journeys. So Carlos, tell us all about you. Tell us all about London Football Journeys.
Yeah, thank you. So I am Carlos Salvador. I'm current director at Football Journeys. Football Journeys is an organization that's been running since 2011. We use football and film as a catalyst to tackle stereotypes and discrimination faced by young people. And we currently deliver across London. And I say currently because our big picture thing is that this should be something that runs across the country. But currently we're within our capacity just in London. Our mission is to connect and empower young people to become empathetic leaders. And for us, an empathetic leader is someone who understands the environment that they're living in, the communities that they are addressing, and looking at things from a perspective of inclusivity as compared to I am the leader, this is what I believe, this is what I'm going to do, etc. So that's what we mean by empathetic leaders. Our vision is a society where young people explore the world around them, embrace differences, and then, unite through their understanding and collaboration with others. And how we do this is by mixing football and film. So we use film to reflect and explore identity. And that's not just individual identity, but that's also the identity of the community where you're coming from. And then we use our football practices to build awareness of leadership skills and team working. And we also explore topics such as discrimination and prejudice within the actual games. So our football is not used to make anybody technically better. We're not interested in the outcomes of the game in terms of have you become a better athlete, etc. What we're really doing is utilizing the game to tackle some of the subjects that I've just mentioned. And so we have a different approach to how we use football. We work in schools. We start with year 9 because this is the age gap where young people are coming into adolescence and they tend to start making decisions and thinking more critically, but also they have this pressure about fitting into their environment and their groups. And so we work with that year group within schools. We deliver for 4 months within the school setting. And as part of that, they receive a level 1 leadership and active citizens award, which is independently accredited by OCN. So it's an opportunity for them to actually be given something for, a certification for the work that they've done, and also something that they can utilize in terms of, looking at life outside of school. So what are you doing extracurricularly that you can actually prove you've done? And I think it's a great way to validate young people for the time and effort that they're putting in. And essentially, I've been at Football Journey for the last 4 years, and I've been in this role for a year now. And over the last 2 years, we're looking at how we move away from our current financial model, which has been very heavily trust and foundation reliant, and moving towards a more enterprise model where it's around trade and it's also around partnership building, so that we're able to bring in new source of income, which will hopefully allow us to then scale our operations and get to that bigger vision where we can be across all the different cities and towns within the UK, etc. So that's what we do. Hopefully, I've summed it up well enough for everybody to get a glimpse or an idea of what it is that we're about.
Carlos, and just at the moment, where we'll come in greater detail onto the sort of ambitions to trade later. But at the moment, what would you say your current sort of funding mix was in terms of trust and foundations to other sources of income?
Yeah, so over the last 2 years, I'd say we're probably about 10% in terms of trade, because we've picked up some tender contracts, and then the rest is trust and foundations. And quite recently, last year was the first year where we also started to take on partnerships with corporates, and corporates starting to pay to participate in certain elements of our program. So if we were if we're speaking about this, I'd say a year and a half ago, it'd probably be 5%. We've been able to get it to 10, and looking to increase that moving forward.
If you can double it year on year, you're doing tremendously well there.
Yeah.
And just on the participation, because you mentioned that the football sort of it's non-competitive and it's not sort of like typical football. Do you find that you get people interested who previously have sort of not been involved with football because of that competitive nature, and perhaps they don't have that previous football experience and they've always sort of thought it's not for me?
Yeah, so I think in terms of competitive, I think if you put a group of people to play a sport, it's always competitive, right? People want to win. So it is competitive in nature. You got young people trying to play. But what I think is different is that actually we as coaches, or our coaches, are not particularly bothered about how good you are at football. We're not there to teach you how to strike a ball, etc. And because of that, what you tend to find is our program encourages them in terms of our recruitment work with schools. We encourage the teachers to look for students who are going to benefit holistically from the program. It's not a sports program per se, it's a program that's utilizing sports and film. And so all our schools, we have a 50-50 split. So unless we're working in a single sex school, we would generally ask for 50-50 boys and girls mix. We'll also be working with different students. Some have behavioral issues, some have educational attainment issues, some might have some anxiety issues and not necessarily have a cohesive relationship with other members of the school community. And so what you tend to find is we recruit a very mixed bag of people, and some of them really like football and don't like film. Some of them have come on because they like film, but they're not really too sure about the football. And what that team working element is about, getting people to learn from the different experiences. And we manage to get to do that, because there's always a way for someone to fit in if it's an inclusive environment. And as I said before, we're teaching about leadership from the perspective of understanding each other, and how to work with each other. So we tend to have a good mix of people who, by the end of the program, are quite unified in their approach.
Thank you, Carlos, and we'll hear from you again later. Lyndall, we're okay if we pass you. So Lyndall works. I'm sorry, Jack. Sorry, Carlos, but Lyndall's definitely got the best organisation name, which is TwistFizz, which I really liked. But over to you, Lyndall.
Thank you. Yes, so yeah, we're TwistFizz CIC, and I'm the managing director, and I founded TwistFizz CIC in 2017. So we've been going for 7 years now, and we manage parks and community tennis facilities on behalf of community partners. So we operate across the borough of Bexley and the Royal Borough of Greenwich, and we operate a total of 9 sites with 31 courts under our remit. And we're responsible for the maintenance of each of those parks facilities, which includes the replacement of equipment, cleaning, tackling antisocial behavior, and everything else that comes with facility management. And on those facilities, not all of them just now, but we offer tennis programs and playing opportunities. And as a social enterprise, we do that, we believe, at the right price for everyone in the community. So it means we, within our programs, we offer paid for coaching. So like you would get at any other tennis club, you want to learn to play tennis, you can pay for a 6-week course and play tennis. Then we also offer subsidized sessions. And in particular, our subsidized sessions are, we target groups that are most susceptible to inactivity. So we do lots of subsidized activity for young people, 11 plus, at our parks. And then we also offer free weekly activity, and that's very much focused on families. So yeah, the coaching offer, we hope that everybody can get involved in coaching if they want to. We manage online bookings, so local community can either pay and play, they can purchase a household subscription. So instead of a club membership as such, the whole house pays a small fee per annum, and then they have access to book courts without having to pay a charge. And then we also, at all of our facilities, offer free play times during the week so that you can book courts, but you don't actually need to pay. Like Carlos, we are tennis, and I am a tennis professional. I'm a level 5 LTA master coach, but our programs are really focused on health and well-being. So promoting healthy lifestyles, encouraging family and friends to play together. So we're not so much about producing the next Coco, Emma, or Nadal, really. It's all about just getting involved. And we're also focused on, I think I've mentioned, working with groups most susceptible to inactivity, and that includes women and girls, older people, people living with disability, and low-income families. So you'll see at our parks, you'll see women's only sessions. We do walking tennis. We have SEN specific sessions, and then we're out in the community lot working with community partners to deliver to some of the groups that wouldn't ever consider coming to a park to play tennis. In terms of our income is raised through pay and play, subscriptions, and our coaching program competition. For example, at Elton Park South, we call that sort of our jewel and our crown in Greenwich, in the borough of Greenwich. There's 4 courts there. We run around 30 hours of organised activity each week. And that's a combination of classes and courses, and we cater for children from the age of 4, and we go all the way up. And it's really, I guess the programs are more focused on those that have never played before, and then those that are getting better at hitting the ball over and in. Then we also run our programs out in the community, and that's all that's all about partnership building. So we work with primary and secondary schools. We do everything from curriculum PE to leadership courses. We run an enrichment academy with one of our local 6th form colleges. And again, that's just about learning a new skill and also getting the opportunity to, work with things that are going to improve, going to look great on your CV. So the leadership, we do the LTA leaders course. And then for those that are really interested, we've supported a number of our young people on to do their LTA level 1 and their LTA level 2. So if they're, thinking about a career in tennis, then obviously starting with the tennis leaders is a good start. Where will I go then? I mean, we're obviously about broadening the reach of the sport, and with a huge focus on curbing inactivity. We run festivals and teacher training, so we like to get involved in everything in the community. We have a great partnership with the Peabody Housing Association, so every summer we go up to Charlton Triangle Estate and we deliver free activity for 4 weeks of the summer, and we do that alongside the coaching program and the holiday camps that go on in the parks. In terms of our income, 95% of our income is derived from traded activity, and then 5% of our income is derived from the grants, and those grants are specifically targeted at those groups that are most susceptible to inactivity. So the two complement each other. We have our core programs, and then we run our community programs, which gives us a nice balance. I think that's probably about it. That's us in a nutshell.
Lyndall, has that always been the case, that funding mix, or did you start with sort of more grant funding at the start of your journey and increase the amount of traded income over time?
Definitely, we definitely started with more grant funding. We were working on targeting those groups that were most susceptible to inactivity. So, we looked for a lot of grant funding to activate activity with young people and build that trust and rapport with young people. And some of those young people went on to pay, and others stayed, in the grant side. And so again, it's a good balance. And we feel we've got, the opportunity for both things, either paid for or, just get involved and take advantage of some of the funded activity.
You might say the ambition isn't to produce the next superstar, but it would be pretty cool if you had been a Wimbledon champion.
It would be. I guess we could identify them, but then we would be handing them to, we've got lots of tennis clubs and lots of performance centers around us that we would recommend they go to. I mean, I guess, again, we would say we've got some development children, 10 and under, but really, it is about participation, and it's about people that aren't tennis players just getting on and grabbing a bat and ball and having a go. So we really, performance is all about taking all of the court time and only having a few people play tennis. Well, that doesn't really fit with our ethos. But yes, I guess it would be good.
I think that's sort of broadly speaking, that's similar across the sort of non-profit and social enterprise sectors, where the motivation does tend to be participation and involvement and improving outcomes, rather than necessarily sort of slicing off the cream of the top to put through intensive training programs.
Is that a question? Do you think it is, or is? I mean,
it was more of an observation. I think it wasn't those annoying ones where when people say this isn't a question, it's more of a statement, and everyone goes, oh, there's more one of those.
Well, it's true, and I do know of other organisations that have charitable arms that that look to support their most talented and their young people that are striving for success. Because certainly everywhere I go, I know I meet. It's not just about talent; it's about drive and dedication. Young people that actually really want to achieve. So I mean, it would be great to have sort of an extra pot of money to support that, but it takes a lot of time and effort, and it's not all about money either.
Thank you, Lyndall. Finally, Jack, over to you. So Jack is from Bankside Open Spaces Trust.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Jack Harrison. I'm head of sport and development at Bankside Open Spaces Trust. Bankside Open Spaces Trust is a environmental and volunteering charity. We provide outstanding green spaces and outdoor activities to enhance the health and well-being of urban communities. We're based in Southwark and Lambeth, so we're just south of the Thames, near London Bridge Station, in the shadow of the Shard. And the organisation as a whole manages about 16 different spaces and gardens, including Red Cross Garden, Tate Modern Community Garden, Waterloo Millennium Green, Crossbones Graveyard. But the space that I manage is called the Marlborough Sports Garden. It's been there for 100 years. It was bequeathed to the people of Southwark by the Duchess of Marlborough, who cleared slums and then set aside the land for recreation. So we feel that the work we're doing today is kind of, you know, continuing the legacy of the Duchess of Marlborough. In terms of kind of the challenges that we're trying to address through our spaces, it's around urbanisation. So we know lots of people in Southwark live in flats and apartments, about 90%, and then 70% of those don't have outdoor space. We also know that there's a big challenge around obesity in this borough, and specifically in the ward that the Marlborough Sports Garden is located in. So I think for Year 6 students, it's one of the highest rates in the country. And we also know there's real challenges around deprivation. I think we've got, you know, 20% lots of boroughs and locations, you know, score highly on the index of multiple deprivation. So with that in mind, you know, the main focus of the space that I manage, the Marlborough Sports Garden, is to address those needs. It's about an acre in size. We are fortunate, you know, it's already gone through a few phases of kind of infrastructure development, and we've been involved for about, as an organisation, for about 20 years. And so it's been through 2 or 3 phases of kind of development, and we have good infrastructure, a 4G five-a-side football pitch, a sand court, so that's quite rare for central London, netball court, basketball area, table tennis tables. So it's a big space with lots of different facilities there. So first of all, I'll just introduce quickly what the activities we do in terms of, you know, focusing on primary school children mainly, and then I'll just speak briefly about the revenue kind of income that we have. In terms of activities, we want to reduce lots of barriers to participation, specifically for those groups that we know where obesity and kind of deprivation are an issue. So after school activities are all free. Lots of consultations been taking place with parents and young people to find out what they want. So some of the days are free play, but some are very structured, and we work with lots of providers to deliver those free sports activities. So some great partners, Surrey Cricket Foundation, UK Wall Ball. We do a roller skating to music session. We do lots of stuff on the beach volleyball, beach tennis, touch rugby. So listening to what they want, lots of non-traditional sports. We've been able to get kind of a 50-50 balance between girls and boys participating in those after school activities. Lots of holiday camps as well from April to October. We set aside 48 free places for low income families using our network of primary schools, but similar to TwistFizz, is it? TwistFizz, yeah. We also do some paid places on those, which helps to generate a little bit of revenue. We do SEN specific sports festivals, walking football and walking sports for older groups. We do weekend activities for teenagers. So looking at kind of timetable, those are our core constituents, if you like. Those are the ones we're focused on, and we want the timetable to work for them. But around that, and fortunately, because of our location and the quality of the facilities we have, we can also do a lot of paid commercial activities and hire out the facilities. And the way we've chosen to do that is to tender a contract to a commercial provider for the peak hours, and then we still look after some of the bookings for the off-peak hours. So that will be sort of afternoons, mornings during the week, and on the weekends. So in terms of kind of a balance of the revenue, you know, if I just look at Marlborough Sports Garden in isolation from the rest of the organisation, it's probably about 20% trusts and foundations, and 80% comes from that commercial activity. The other things we can do is big one-off events. They're very, you know, profitable. And we also, yeah, the big one-off events are really helpful, just give a big boost of revenue. And then 80% does come through the commercial stuff. But because we are sitting within a broader organisation, lots of that revenue that's generated from the commercial hire cross-subsidises other stuff that takes place in the organisation. And just to end, yeah, in terms of another positive kind of revenue generation for the organisation, lots of volunteering days, which local corporates, you know, get involved in. And we can, I think the cost for that per morning is £750, and that's proven to be a really successful kind of model. Just to echo a couple of other points in terms of partnerships, that's really strong, you know, kind of avenue to pursue, and getting involved in local bids. So the Business Improvement District, just to understand the networks of organisations and companies that we have around us. Thanks.
Jack, and you didn't mention the enormous redevelopment project that you're currently managing as well. But away from that, just day to day, what is it that keeps you up at night? Sort of, what's the biggest challenge that you face?
I think, well, as you mentioned, probably the capital project. So it is an acre in size, and we have embarked upon the biggest capital project I think Bankside Open Spaces Trust has ever embarked upon. So that's 5.3 million. And in terms of trying to find capital funding in the current landscape is incredibly difficult. But yeah, just to mention, we are in Southwark, and the site is, owned by Southwark. The Borough of Southwark. So we have a lease to manage the site, and then a management agreement on how we can manage that site. And thankfully, yeah, we have good support from our kind of legal pro bono team. So we were able to put together a contract that satisfied both parties, that allowed us to kind of embark on a more kind of commercial angle for some of the work, as long as we continue to focus on the core groups.
I'll throw this one out to the wider group, but Jack, you mentioned finding funding has become harder, and I think that is throughout the sector. That's certainly the impression that it is harder to get funding. It's harder to get multi-year funding, and I think within the sports sector as well, a lot of grassroots organisations are saying that funding is more difficult to attain. Just wondering, for each of you, what your impression of the current funding landscape is. Carlos, you're off mute, so I'm going to come to you straight away.
No problem. Yeah, I think it's a very competitive market. There's a lot more organizations that are looking for funding in the same pots, but I also think that a lot of organizations put a lot of money into the kind of COVID relief situation, and therefore they've kind of drawn back in terms of how much money they're currently funding, because they would have funded for a lot of things and spent a lot of money that they hadn't planned for. So I think at this moment in time, there's less money in the space, simply because some of those organizations are having to rebalance their books in order to be more sustainable moving forwards, which has an impact in the kind of funding situation. But also COVID itself created a lot of pressure on organizations. I think most organizations had a lot of work to do in terms of dealing with the impact that COVID had on young people. So those two situations, one, it was important that those trusts and foundations and some of those other independent organizations made a big effort in terms of relief. But at the same time, now that they're needing to rebalance, it also creates this space where there's a lot more people looking for, the little that's around. So it is difficult. And I think it's always been difficult in terms of core funding. I think there's always been a lot more funding for projects. But of course, for projects to run, you need, the whole management structure of the organization to be able to put that in place. And I think that's always been the case. For me, I've always felt that there's been less in terms of core and more in terms of actual project money, which is always going to be a difficult space to be in.
Absolutely. Lyndall, you're at the other end of the spectrum where you're trading much more, but obviously organizational budgets are tighter. We're in a cost of living crisis. So are you seeing it harder to generate that traded income, or has it remained the same?
Most definitely. I mean, I think COVID for us in terms of tennis, it was one of the very few sports outdoor and considered acceptable to play. So we actually prospered, during that time and at the end of COVID, because nobody, actually, I think people had got out of the habit of going to the gym. They rediscovered parks. They loved to be outdoor. People were still working from home. So, tennis actually boomed in that time. And then obviously, we've hit the aftermath of COVID and world affairs. And now, we've gone right into economic crisis, an economic crisis, and definitely our traded income has gone down compared to 2022. We've probably seen a 10 to 15% cut in income per annum. You know, in particular, some of our adults would play twice or 3 times a week, and some of our children were playing twice a week, and we see very much now that there are more people just playing once a week, and also our young people are sort of our 8 to 10-year-olds that used to come to after school activity have definitely dropped off, because schools are now offering more after school activity which is free to children. So definitely, you know, our model has had to change somewhat in the last couple of years, because there has been a downward turn. The good news, it's not all bad news, is, you know, we're starting to see an increase again, but, you know, we're looking at a very different business to what we were 3 years ago.
Thank you. And Jack, sort of, you mentioned that finding funding is getting harder, but from your experience, you know, how is that the case?
I think I mean, just to reflect on something that Carlos said around the core funding, you know, it's not to say that as you get more kind of revenue generated, your own income, that, you know, trust and foundations would kind of drop off. I think they should always play a role, because as much as you can insulate and protect your core funding by going for grant funding, then that's good. But yeah, I think in terms of going for funding, it's just more competitive, I think. And so we found that, yeah, where the percentage for our fundraising manager may have been a lot higher, you know, a year, 18 months ago, it is starting to come under that kind of competitive pressure. I think as we've been able to sort of build local networks through our bid, and we're you know, lucky to have really good one, Team London Bridge and Better Bankside, through introductions to sort of different range of funders. We have been fortunate to be able to kind of plug the gaps that maybe we've lost through more traditional grant funding. So for us in this area, given the level of development, you know, developers are one of those people who have kind of a vested interest in providing better activities for the people who live here. And if it fits with our kind of, you know, ethical fundraising policy, then we're happy to kind of look broader than those traditional grants and trusts for sources of income.
Thank you. And I guess my next question sort of follows on from this, and, you know, in a time where there are limited resources available, how can organizations find the time and the money to begin carving out opportunities to start trading? Because it's not a switch that you just turn on overnight and expect this new income to come in. It's something you do need to invest in. Any tips, Jack? I'll start with you again, just because I can see you on the screen there.
I think start small, because then you're encouraged. And I think what's helpful at the moment for us, makes it a bit easier, is the technology, obviously. So I think for us, you know, we have a booking platform at the weekend, which we can also use for some of those paid places on the holiday schemes as well. And I think once you start to see that some of the strategies that you're trying are generating whatever levels of income, however small they are, I think that gives you real encouragement and enthusiasm to kind of look at what works. And, you know, you get such good data back from lots of the platforms as well. You can really understand where you're making sort of positive progress. Take that positive progress and then try to build on it, like Lyndall is, you know, year on year, to see, you know, how it can be developed.
Thomas, you're right at the start of this journey, so it'd be really interesting to get your insight on how, you know, the organizational structure might have changed to adapt towards a trading model.
Yeah, I mean, the actual organizational model hasn't changed per se. I think firstly, it's about understanding yourself as an organization. So for instance, in comparison to maybe Jack and Lyndall, we don't have a facilities. And so our opportunity for trading is very different in terms of, actually, we don't have a physical space that we can invite other people to. And so the first thing, and going back to what Jack's just mentioned in terms of starting small, first and foremost, it's about looking at what we've had to do is look at our organization, look at the services that we deliver, and ask ourselves, who else outside of our current customers, our customers being schools, who else outside of our current customer is attached to the problem that we're trying to solve? And are there things that we're doing as part of our service that they can buy into, that we can basically sell to them to help us, bridge that gap or create the answer? So, I think Jack mentioned, that they've been doing some work with corporates and coming in for a corporate day. And last year, it was the first time that we were able to do that. I keep saying last year, but still in 2024. But for this year, earlier this year was the first time we were able to do that, where we had a corporate come in, gave us some money, and actually participated in some of the work that we're doing on the ground with young people. But the key thing for us there was, in order for that to have happened, and it happened organically, the first conversation was actually us looking at what we're doing, what other opportunities can we connect what we're doing to, and then who are the people we already know that can help us with that. And so the link to that particular corporate came from a personal relationship that I have with somebody, where I said, actually, we need a space that looks a bit like this, that comes from, we were looking for an IT company that would have a certain type of aesthetic place within central London. And we, a friend happened to link me with someone that could offer us that just for a workshop. And having done the workshop there, they then started to realize, okay, what it is that we do as an organization and how it linked to them. And that created its own opportunity. So I think when you're small and starting from where we are, you don't have all the resources, you don't have all the manpower to implement into just diversifying your strategy. So you have to start with who are the people that we know and connected to that can kind of bring into that journey.
Carlos, as you're going through this process, is there how do you qualify in and qualify out what would be a good income development sort of pipeline compared to something that isn't, and potentially could be a bit of a red herring? Do you use some sort of mission money matrix, or is it just gut instinct? Or
so, I mean, one of the things that we've been able to do especially as part of my program of SSE recently, was starting to map that out. So starting to map out, and this goes back to what I said about understanding your services. So for instance, we charge the schools for what, we do in the schools, but actually the school marketplace has changed from 2011. If you look at we work in secondary schools, there's a lot more academies who are run pretty much like corporations. So actually our model from 2011 to now doesn't, our current model doesn't reflect what's happening in the education space. It actually reflects what we found in 2011. So we've done a bit of research around actually what is our price margin? Was our price margin high enough? Was it low, etc.? So that's the first thing. It's about understanding your offer and being able to do some of that research. Another bit of research that we had to do was around who are the similar organizations to ourselves who don't own their particular, who don't have a facility. What are they doing? How does what they're doing differ to ours, so that we can learn from others in a similar space? And then it's about going back to the drawing board and going, okay, these are the services that we deliver. These are the issues that we're trying to resolve. These are some of the individuals within the wider sector, not just our own sector. So, an IT company coming in to work with, year 9 children on the ground at their school through a football and film program is not because they're connected to IT. It's because they're connecting to resolving an issue that young people have. And therefore, it's about looking at what you're doing from a 360 angle and really trying to understand, are there other ways to buy in help, as opposed to looking at it solely from the perspective of it has to be something to do with football or film, etc.
That's a great answer. Thank you, Carlos. Lyndall, one for you really is, as your organisation scaled up its traded income and reduced the dependency on grant, did you need to bring in sort of specific skills and capabilities to your team? And also, I'm interested in sort of organizational mindset shift. You know, there are people see sales and trade as quite scary often. I was just wondering how the organization countered that.
Well, I mean, as we got bigger, we had to call on experts to help us, and you know, I think, you know, when you're looking at growing your income, you've really got to look at, you know, critical friends and people that can help you from the outside to bounce ideas off, and then diversify. I think I'm probably going off piece there, but I've been just listening to what Jack and Carlos have been saying about growing income, and you know, you really do have to dedicate some time and potentially a little bit of money to growing that income. And if I just look at, you know, using a bat and ball and our expertise as tennis providers, you know, we can provide tennis to children, we can provide it to adults, and then definitely, you know, in terms of growing our income, we can certainly provide it to corporates. We can run events, we can run competitions. And then outside of that, we're all about health and well-being. So who else can we engage with? Well, actually, I mean, my football skills are, you know, are not so great, but actually, you know, health and well-being, we can play some football, we can play some volleyball, we can do some sport-specific training for, you know, people that want to be outdoors and things like that. So, you know, we use our sort of umbrella health and well-being to look at ways in which we can diversify our income. David, I don't think I've answered your question at all, have I?
You gave me a better answer, Lyndall. And there's a question that's in the Q&A, if I can find it, which is one that I wanted to build on. And I think you've all covered this in some way, but it's just around how can we ensure that that sport remains accessible as you move towards that trade-led model, and you know, you start charging for services. You've talked about sort of subsidizing sort of funded places. How did you work that out? What was the pricing structure behind that?
Well, I mean, we did some competitive analysis, and we think sort of, you know, compared to what clubs charge for tennis, we charge a relatively sort of, you know, we hope to charge an amount that a lot of people can afford. And then alongside that, you know, we obviously invest a lot in our workforce and growing a workforce. So we have volunteers, so we can also offer free activity. And then that subsidized activity, we know that there are certain groups that aren't going to be investing in, you know, health and well-being. So they're the ones that we want to target with, target with specific projects for them. So we know it's accessible because a lot of people come, and you know, when we do our surveys, we find out that you know, people do find that our services are affordable. But as a social enterprise, what we're really keen on doing is ensuring there's a price point for everyone. So, you know, we do offer free play, and we offer that at times that potentially retired people or people at home can access. Children can access free play, you know, during holiday times. So it really is by trial and error. But you know, if people are coming, yes, we need all of that core activity because that sustains some of you know, the subsidized activity that we do.
And have you ever had any issues with people who you've previously given free services to then charging them? Has there ever been an expectation that things should be free, or not something that you've encountered?
Well, I mean, it's sad because sometimes when you're offering something for free and it stops, then sadly some of those groups just don't have access anymore, and actually you don't get that feedback from them. But yes, I mean, you know, even a cost, even if it's £1 or £2, that can be prohibitive to a lot of groups that we're working with. At the same time, you know, sometimes people sort of question or don't seem to value free activity as well, you know, so that you offer this free activity and then you find that no one comes up or they don't bother cancelling, and you've got sort of 100 other people waiting for that place. So, you know, it really is finding that balance as to you know, the people you're working with, you know, see the value of the activity they're getting involved in. But yes, I mean, there's always tough. That I think there always has to be an element of free activity. We generally like to do that free activity when we're working within communities as opposed to, you know, working within the parks.
Jack, anything you'd add there? It's always a sticky subject, isn't it? Pricing. It's a tricky one for people to get right.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, we've made the choice, I think, for all the after school activities to make it free, and is where we can to, you know, make the activities free, just so there is no barriers. And we're fortunate that we do generate quite a lot of revenue from the commercial hire, and that where is needed goes into the delivery of those programs. But I, yeah, definitely hear what Lyndall's saying about, you know, if you, for our holiday places, which are free to local families, we have to do a lot of work calling parents to check if they're coming, to ask them to come. And there's obviously, you know, different challenges that parents and families have. So we're always understanding, but it does take a lot of work to ensure that those places are full and used, you know, so people can benefit from the programs. But we were surprised this summer, you know, we did start with the paid places as well alongside them, and that did generate significant income. So I think like Lyndall has said, it's a balance, I think, and we're always sort of reflecting on the data to make sure we're trying to get that balance right.
That's a good question from Richard here. So how do you ensure that the free play reaches the individuals that will benefit the most from it, but that those who could afford it aren't utilising the free space?
That's a great question, and a lot of the time that free play offering is accessed by people that you would generally say don't need it. And then I would just go back to actually going out into the community and working with our targeted groups. That's how we know that free play has great value and impact. But yes, I mean, you know, when you're offering free play activity, everyone can take advantage of it. Yeah, and often there are groups and families that pass the message on, and, you know, everybody's using it, and yeah, it's difficult to stop that happening.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And we go out very much with flyers and try to interact with people face to face, just to make sure there's no kind of language barriers, or, you know, they're not intimidated by having to do the registration process purely online. We'll also go to lots of primary schools, kind of coffee mornings, so we can speak directly to parents, again, whose first language might not be English. And we have in the past, yeah, you know, it's great that there are really proactive parents out there, but we also have another list, and maybe we might give those people on that other list a day or two in advance to get an opportunity to sign up. So everyone does get the chance, but we're conscious that some people are super quick, super efficient. Some other people need a bit more time to get, you know, to take up the opportunity.
John Carlos, I'm very aware that this is a webinar in itself, so I'm slightly hesitant about asking it. So very briefly, Carlos, and this is a question from Empress. What is the best way or approach to get tendered contracts in schools?
Yeah, so in fact, we've only over the last 2 years had a tendered contract in Southwark, and this was through the DFE. However, we were already in a school in Southwark, and this pilot that the DFE wanted to run across several boroughs in London came up, and the school itself that we were working at is who asked us to do that. So this is our first. So where I said at the beginning, we've only had this last 2 years of really looking at diversifying our income. One of those things that we did was go for this tender. It's the first tender that we've done. I wouldn't say that I at this moment in time, we'd be experts in terms of the tender process. We came to know about it through the work we were already doing with a particular school. So that's an area that we're going to explore further, because what I can say is through that tender, we were able to ask for more full cost recovery. So our pricing was more full cost recovery for the schools, whereas our normal schools would be paying anything between 25 and 50%. And so it makes a massive shift to be able to have a tender. However, we're not, I wouldn't say we were skilled in the process of tendering, having only done it the one time. And also this pilot that we're on actually ends in March in 2025. So it also means trying to then, and this is something that we're going through at the moment, is how you're then going to move schools who haven't had to pay for a provision for the last 2 years, how you then move them into our core program where they are paying. And, I think that conversation that you've just had with Lyndall and Jack around, can people actually afford it? That also goes back to the schools. There will be a lot of time where schools will say they don't have the budget. And it's very easy for us to say yes to every school, but actually we've had to come to a point where if a school can't meet a certain budget, it's detrimental to us as an organization to move forward. And I think that's probably the hardest learning curve for us, because you want to go in, you want to work with schools, you want to work with young people, but actually we have to become skilled in, you should only be doing that if it's to the benefit of the organization. If it's detrimental to the organization, then actually you're creating more of a problem for yourself in the long run.
It's so important, because it's really about knowing the value of your services, isn't it? Because otherwise you can look at contracts that you're delivering, and if you look at what seems like an attractive pot of money, but then you look at the cost of actually servicing this contract, and you realize that you're operating at a loss on it. Empress, I would say we did run a webinar about accessing schools about six to 8 months ago. If you go to our YouTube channel, and if you just go to YouTube and type "School for Social Entrepreneurs," through those video playlists, there's a really, really good webinar about winning contracts with schools there. Question from Vicky here. Could I ask if anyone links with the local authority social care services for families in need of support?
I'm working with Bexley at the moment, with public health and also the safer neighborhoods. I think I might have that wrong. But yes, we've done projects with families at risk, and work specifically on getting families to do activity together and encouraging that independent play so that they can go down to their local courts. They know how to access the courts. They've got some rackets. And we're also working with Bexley again, because I think like Jack has mentioned, one of Bexley's visions is they have a big issue, big challenge with childhood obesity. I know that in some of our sites in the north of Bexley, we've got a lot of antisocial behaviour. So at the moment, I am speaking with the public health team. I'm speaking with the safety team to look at ways in which we can engage young people in that area so that they're using the tennis courts for tennis and not for other activities. So yes, I mean, in all stuff is keeping facilities safe, but also providing opportunity to families at risk. I think there are a lot of public health teams and councils that are, very keen on working with providers that can, work in partnership with other organisations and deliver a great service.
I think we've got time for 2 more questions before we close. So Jack, this is one specifically for you from Hillary. Jack said peak hours are contracted out. Who are these contracted to schools or corporate?
So we work with a third party, a commercial organisation called Hire a Pitch. and then they will take on responsibility for all of those peak hours in a tendered contract. So that alleviates a lot of pressure off us in terms of having to find people who are going to book, the courts. And if there is no one booking a court on a, rainy Friday night or a wet Wednesday lunchtime, then that risk sits with the organisation that has the commercial contract. So yeah, that's how we've approached it. I think there is great opportunity to do tendering processes, but I would just say do due diligence about who you're going to, tender it out to, and get a good pro bono legal lawyer to help you with your contract.
Final question, and if there's anyone who loves legal structures, raise your hand and you can answer. And it's from Rashid. So for voluntary organisations, do they need to change their legal structures to allow them to trade? I can see us all looking like thinking we should know the answer to this.
Yeah,
Lyndall?
well, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I'm sorry.
Carla?
Yeah, we're a charity. We haven't had to change in order to trade, so I'm not sure how to answer that question.
I think the key phrase here, God, this is embarrassing. I've worked at SSE selling stuff for SSE for 13 years. I think the key phrase here is primary purpose trading. So if it's something which is sort of closely associated to your organization's mission, then you're able to trade. Some charities specifically set up social enterprise trading arms where they can bring income through. I would say, Rashid, as you can tell by the way that I'm stumbling around this, I am not a legal structures expert. Google it and you will find something. I'm pretty sure Cooperatives UK has got a really good legal structures guide. I'll see if I can dig it out, and Rashid, maybe I'll send it on. Jack, are you gonna swoop in here as a legal
No,
structures expert?
I can tell you that we did open a trading arm and then we closed it down. And if you ever have to deal with that, then get a consultant. That's my advice.
Perfect. I always think that is a fantastic place to end a webinar. So Jack, Carlos, Lyndall, thank you ever so much for taking part. And thank you those who joined and for the questions that came in. I will be sending a recording of the webinar round. Please do feel free to share it. You might also be wondering, why are the School for Social Entrepreneurs suddenly putting on a webinar about sports trading models? And it doesn't come, so there is an ulterior motive here. We've recently launched a new program of support for sporting organisations in London. It's called Go London Match Trade Grow. And that's aimed at organisations that are trading up, and it's organisations that are scaling up. So if your income is £20,000 or above, you can apply for the Trade Up programme. If it's £150,000 and above, you can apply for the Scale Up programme. Each of those programs comes with a grant, so it's £15,000, or it's a match trading grant, because it's £15,000 at trade up level and £25,000 at scale up level. And those match trading grants are incentivized to support you as you transition to a traded business model. So for each pound that you generate from trade, you can draw down £1 of match trading grant against it. I will send details to everyone who joined the call. Please do feel free, if it's not something which is directly relevant to your organisation, but you have people in your network that is, please do send details on. Guys, I think that's it. It's always really weird when you get to one of the end of these webinars and you can't see the screen, because I don't know what we're really meant to do, if we wave awkwardly at each other or we just hang up and leave. But thank you all for taking part.
Go for the awkward wave.
Go for the awkward wave. Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.